Good afternoon, campus community, campus partners, campus family, Grizzlies, everyone, and welcome to another edition of State of the Grizz with myself, Nestor Melendez, and Dean Pryor, here to continually bring you latest news, updates, and information as it pertains to our campus community and happenings in and around our city with regards to not only Gutman, but also CUNY and our local and beautiful city of New York. I'm very happy to be with you today, June 10th, which is exactly 8 days from our Salute to Graduate event, which we'll be talking about shortly. Um, if I got my information correct, the semester classes ended on Monday, and we are firmly in finals. Um, and we're motivating towards, what is the end of a semester, typically for most campuses, but for Gutman, the way we're set up, spring one,
Right.
post shut, and then we go into spring two, post salute to graduates or post commencement. And so that's where we find ourselves. A beautiful 80, 90-degree day in New York City. And I'm happy to be sharing the space again with you, Dean. Welcome to State of the Grizz.
Ness, always a pleasure. I want to give a shout out to the almost 30 people watching on Blackboard and about half dozen folks watching on IG Live. It's always a pleasure to be here. I enjoy the space. I enjoy the conversation with you. And more importantly, I enjoy the interaction with our students. You guys continue to teach me something new through each of these interactions and engagements. And I'm humbled that so many folks would take time out of their schedule, especially with students being at the beginning of finals week, and really taking the time to plug in. It's important, that we create this space and that we hold true to our promise that this is your space. And again, I appreciate your engagement. Ness, as every week, we say thank you to our essential workers, our healthcare workers, as we continue to move through the pandemic. Um, Last couple of weeks, I want to take time to thank those that have taken time, care, and their heart, their energy, their money, and just given a piece of themselves to really support the movement that's going on in our streets, all around us, around the world. And prayerfully, the movement will continue to have momentum in the courtrooms, on the boardrooms, in the financial areas. I mean, any place and every place that there's systemic and institutionalized historical racial inequality. It's extremely important, and it's really one of the reasons why today we wanted to make sure that we opened the room and gave space to students to log in and participate. But definitely understand at where we are in the schedule that this is a little bit of a heavy lift. But I wanted to spend some time, obviously, conversing with you, but also reflecting and really, in many ways, responding to what our students have asked us to provide for them. So, I know we've got a ton of information, Ness. I don't know where do you think we should start, but we're here to really continue that dialogue because it is one that, as an institution, we've made a pledge to confront, combat, and engage in consistently. Um, and we want to make sure that we hold true to that in this space and all others.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess what I will interject is to say that last week's State of the Grizz, if I were to date myself and take a page from old TV shows, was a very special episode of State of the Grizz, in that our student community came out in force and represented themselves and their concerns in a way that we've not had very many opportunities, especially under this work from home, shelter in place order. And so it was a critical moment of reflection for us to hear directly from the students. It wasn't an email. It wasn't a manifesto. It was student voices crying out and telling us that they are under stress, they are under duress, that there are stuff and things that they need to see from us as an institution, from us as individuals, as administrators, as faculty members, as staff members, and as a member of that Grizzly community and family. Um, some of it was hard truths. Some of it was tough to listen to. But it was all very real and grounded in lived experiences and against a backdrop, that right now in New York City, but across the nation, people's eyes are being opened finally. Folks are listening finally.
Right.
Awareness is being raised through multiple channels finally. Uh, Folks are using social media. They're using every available platform to raise the concerns that have long been ignored or pushed to the side, and saying we're not going to be silenced anymore. And so that's what happened. Uh,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love how you described it, how we're leveraging and using social media, because I think, I can remember, maybe dating myself a little bit, and some of those that are in the space now that might, be slightly older than I can remember a time when we talked about the revolution being televised. Well, we know that the media outlets overarchingly are controlled by people that don't look like you and I, don't have the same background as you and I. And what social media has allowed us really to do is have direct access to everyone else and vice versa. You know what I mean? So as we put these statements out, as we change the narrative and really change the definitions and understandings of what equality and equity mean, because everyone's not clear on those things and how different those two things are. It's like direct contact. You know what I mean? We're not reliant on Channel 5 to air the segment. I can remember, again, as a child growing up, always wondered why it is that the person, and this was a stereotype, with the rollers in their hand, the slippers on, would be the person that got previewed on the 9 o'clock news when they interviewed a dozen people when the incident happened in my neighborhood. You know what I mean? And we talk about how selective those people were, those producers or whomever, when they decided that that's the person that they would put in front of the camera and then preview on the 9 o'clock news that everyone watched before they went to bed. We're no longer dependent on that. Um, we are televising the revolution from the palms of our hands. You know what I mean? Everyone has a recording device, a streaming device. You know what I mean? Ready at their fingertips, and more importantly, access to information in a way that the world has never seen. So I think that the mobility, the ingenuity, the resilience, and the courage of the generation that is really mobilizing right now is the battery. And like you said, they're using this avenue to really push those things forward. And as you said, I'm proud and just humbled to serve as the dean of students here, for phenomenal students who stepped up and said, you know what, dean, we need more from government. Government promised us X and they delivered on Y. Y'all promised X, so we need that. That is a type of support, engagement, and co-conspiratorship that you all have in many ways sold us on. Where that's at, you know what I'm saying? And we have to, as an institution, as educators, as human beings, respond to that appropriately. And I think in many ways we have started doing that, and I don't want to say that we have, because the response is incomplete and needs to be ongoing. You know what I mean? Until we can actually see the change, we will have work to do within our organization and beyond it. So,
Yeah, yeah. So you talk about the reactive portions of this, and sadly, many of us, corporations, businesses, people, uh, higher education, K through 12 education institutions find themselves in a reactive space, and that's not to excuse any of that. The hope is that the work was being done all along and in partnership with. We find ourselves reactive, and so one of the things that we did as a result of last week was we held these sessions that we put out to the community, which was a processing racial injustice in today's society, um, which we did in partnership with some of our staff members, and we pushed this out there to the students. So some of these have already happened, and we had turnout. One of these actually happened this weekend, Saturday. There was a space hosted by UMOC. It's not listed on this flyer, but we broke out spaces for students. We broke out spaces for affinity groups. We broke out spaces for people to be able to talk about what they feel, what's going on, what is their reaction to the things that are happening, what is their reaction to the things that are not happening. Um, and the part of the problem that we find ourselves with is this is a conflux. I don't even know if that's the right word. It just felt like the right word to use of circumstances. We had the COVID pandemic lockdown, which kept people at home
right,
and fearful. Then we had the incidents with the murdering of George Floyd, which then leveraged and spotlighted Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and a whole host of other folks. People needed to get out onto the streets to protest, which then activated a media frenzy. And so many stories are being told. Some are good information. Some are deceitful and intended to dilute
right.
what's happening. Some are just outright lies and all that kind of stuff. And so, part of this is that we have to interrogate all of those different pieces of information, look at those posts, do deep dives, research the companies, research the news sites, the sources, and find out what's really happening, and then start to make decisions about how we're going to move forward in those spaces. And as a community, we're trying to be responsive to that by creating spaces where we can come together and hear each other, especially and specifically the students. Uh,
Absolutely. And I think that the key, or one of, because you made many very strong points, but I think one of the keys is that interrogation of what's going on in the world, and also processing um, many of our own thoughts and many of our own actions, and being accountable for that, and the impact of those, especially the ways in which we sometimes think and operate. You know what I mean? Um, one of the professionals that we brought in to have conversations with faculty, staff, and administration about equity talked about folks having a colonized mind. You know what I mean? And very often, when we have moments in our history of upheaval, people talk about when will we return to normal? Well, the colonized mind says that the normal is where we need to go, but those that are in doing that deep dive and interrogation recognize that normal is toxic. The old normal is poison, and that's how we ended up here. So none of us should be thinking about going back to normal and going back to what was, because what was filled with so much venom and animus that it produced these events, which then bore these actions and reactions. So the normal is not okay. There needs to be a next reality. There needs to be conversations about restructuring, redistributing funds to those things that are important, that are actually going to move society and this agenda forward, which is about making sure that the world knows Black Lives Matter, but it's about being humane and being in a place where my blackness is not weaponized against me, where I am perceived as a threat because of the color of my skin. You know what I mean? And that's the place that we need to move. Like I said, last week, I talked about being anti-racist, in that being anti-racist is an interrogation, as you said, but also about fighting racism wherever you confront it. And oftentimes, because of the colonized mind, that racism or those racist thoughts or the impact of kind of PTSD of racism produces negative impact within ourselves and negative thoughts. So we have to interrogate and be comfortable with that interrogation within ourselves and be empowered in spaces to believe that our voice has power and that our voice can be heard and that we as individuals can actually make a difference and a change. Because that's the thing. Sometimes, especially the further up the ladder in academics, in business, whatever industry you're in, the further up the ladder you go, the larger the company, usually the fewer people look like you. So then oftentimes it can lead to you feeling like your voice is minimized and minoritized. You know what I mean? And that's problematic. But that's a systemic issue. It's not a individual issue. That is the system as it has been set up. You know what I mean, Ness? It's they talk about very often inclusion, but inclusion sometimes just looks like having a seat at the table. Inclusion has to do with ideals. Inclusion has to do with voice. Inclusion has to do with outcome and how you process and what is central to your thought process as an institution and an organization. One of my favorite memes, and then we can, discuss this over the week, is you have all of these companies that are now saying, Black Lives Matter. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to demean any messages from any company that has put out something heartfelt. But as you put out your Black Lives Matter message and your support for the movement, what's your board look like? What's your executive team look like? How many people of color have been in your executive leadership program? You know what I mean? So we are, I think, thankful to hear those messages, but where's the action behind it? Where's the lived experience and changes that your company is instituting? You know what I mean? Those are the things that folks are looking for in the next phase. You know what I mean?
As you mentioned voice, Dean Pryor, I'm conscious of the fact that right now this sounds like a conversation between you and I that happens to have an audience of 47 people listening to it, both on the Blackboard and on the Instagram channel. We invite members of the community, if they want to speak out, make a statement or something, to go ahead and raise their hand in the chat. That will allow me to highlight them and give them the ability to speak. We muted the mics because we wanted to make sure that some of the technical difficulties from last week, where we had conflicting mics and multiple signals coming in, thus disturbing the feed, that didn't happen this week, so that we're able to have a straight flowing conversation. But if there are students in the chat, and I've seen a number of them join in that feel like there's something that they want to state, claim, reference, please feel free to raise your hand, and we'll open up the chat line for that. And also other members of our community as well, understanding that we're going to give priority to the students and then go through the queue. One thing that I think is interesting to point out, and we kind of broached this right at the beginning of this conversation, is that this is a topic that has been talked about for some time. When I talk about the violence against Black lives, when I talk about the the harm that is being done to the black community. This is not a secret. What's happening now is that it's being publicized more because people have access to cameras, people have access to technology,
Right.
to platforms where they can do that. And I think we started to see some of that when, and I'm not drawing parallels in terms of the suffering. What I'm just saying is that when Hurricane Maria struck Puerto Rico, and there was inaccurate reporting on the number of people that were killed. They said the number was something like 43 people died. The truer number was 4,300 and something.
Mm-hmm.
But folks on the island were able to document what was happening in real time. Now we're seeing members of the community, of the black community, posting their interactions, posting uh, the whether it's with the police, whether it's other folks, white folks in stores, security guards following them in places, people policing their presence in places like Starbucks and all that kind of stuff. You can't hide from it anymore, and I
Right.
think that's a fundamental difference from just a few years ago where that stuff wasn't available.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there was some, like, people didn't believe that this was happening. Now they have undisputable proof.
Right.
um,
And I think people fall into multiple buckets. I think there are people that absolutely believe that it's not happening. I believe that people think that it's happening, but it's not as severe as folks make it out to be. And then there's still a cadre and groups of people, and we've seen them, posting the George Floyd challenge where they're kneeling on somebody that absolutely do not see the humanity in folks in black indigenous people of color. They just don't. You know what I mean? And then there are several other buckets that folks fall into and things like that. The key is, like you said, calling people out and calling people in, those that are willing to learn and be engaged in the conversation. You know what I mean? But it's also connected to commerce in a way. You know what I mean? Because one of the things that, Malcolm X is one of my heroes. Um, and obviously I never had a chance to meet him, but I've read, much of his text and understand the lineage of his life. One of the most important things that he said, and a number of civil rights folks throughout the years that we've been fighting this fight for over 400 years, have said is, why buy where you can't be hired? You know what I mean? Um, because that is one of the many systems and ways that we can really affect change through this movement. You know what I mean? And that's why, Blackout Tuesday was such an important moment. It wasn't about, hashtags, but it was about understanding where really your dollars should go. You know what I mean? Those are actions. Those are actionable things that all folks can do. If you know you're engaging with an institution that is owned by an organization or individuals that don't believe that Black Lives Matter or that all humans deserve equal treatment, why are you continuing to patronize them? You know what I mean? That we're no longer in a position where your corner store is the only store that you have access to. You know what I'm saying? We now have choices and can now make better choices and healthier choices to help with this movement. Sorry, I gotta wipe my brow here. I didn't want to turn on the fan because then you guys would hear it. But there are actions that folks can take more than letters and apologies and things like that, which is another thing that I think we maybe want to address, and I'll really looking for some students to chime in here. We talked about the letters from corporations and things like that, but the truth of the matter is, as a black man in America, it I'm not really in a position to want to hear or process any more apologies, you know, and I know that that has, um, you know, been repeated by some of my colleagues of people of color. Um, you know, you know, the time is, you know, if you feel like you need to apologize, then that means that there are things that you recognize that you can do differently. What I need, or what folks have expressed to me that we need, is for those behaviors to change. You know what I mean? I think we're past the apologies. We're now at a place where walk the walk instead of just talking the talk, because that's that's been happening. You know what I mean? To your point, Nestor, like it, you know, we're out, you know, we're marching, we're participating, we're engaging, and you know, now we need to, you know, really have some discussions and stop the apologies. You know, so I know we're looking for some students to, you know, participate. You know, there's some staff and faculty in here. We're up to about 50 folks in the chat. I mean, we're online right now. So, you know, if anyone wants to participate, please, you know, jump in here. This is not, you know, the Nestor and Charles show. This is the state of the Grizz. Um, Prioritized for students, but open and engaging to everyone in the Gutman Community College family, as Nestor eloquently said earlier. You know?
Yeah, and just a quick review of our guest list shows a wonderful mix of student leaders, students who have spoken out, students who were present in last week's conversation, and also a number of faculty and staff and administration from the college. Some folks have entered comments into the chat, so if people want to read that, please, you know, definitely if you don't feel like speaking out, you can type your commentary in there. It's also a space, and I want to, you know, make this clear for folks that if you have resources that you want to share, this is a community space, and so if there is a particular um, uh, uh, repository of information that is going to give people some guidance, give people an opportunity to support, please also feel free to add that into the chat, to the chat thread. Websites, web links are all accessible there, and we've used that for that. But I think, you know, one of the takeaways from this, Dean, is that like never before, a conversation has started in a way that engaged almost every level of the college at the same time.
Yeah.
Typically, we meet in rooms as um, administrators, as departments, as offices, um, focus groups, the classes that are being taught, faculty meetings, departmental meetings. Um, but very few times do we have spaces that have all of the voices in the room at the same time, which I think is something that when we developed State of the Grizz, we really primarily saw this as an opportunity to keep people updated in real time about changes that were happening to us related to COVID policies and CUNY Central Office policies, and our ability to keep the community informed of like how to access emergency funds, how to access or get food for those students or families that were food insecure. And then we realized that we had to adapt and modify this to bring information not only about COVID,
Right.
but now also about the movement, the student concerns in a really big way. And I think that hopefully as we start to look at the time and place where we may be able to be back in a space together, that there is still a use for this platform to bring together students, faculty, admin, staff, to have conversations that can inform some of the stuff that we're going to be doing on campus as well. You know, as this continues to evolve, I'm not sure that we have an idea of what the final version of State of the Grizz looks like, but I think I can say safely that it is rapidly becoming a place where we can try to get the voices in real time, at least once a week, uh, around what's affecting us as a community.
I think you hit the nail on the head, about kind of the evolving nature of the state of the Grizz, but more importantly, the impact of it. I am still, I think, blown away by our students and the way, I'm going to be really candid, they called the institution to task last week. You know what I mean? It, from the faculty, the staff, the administration, and personally as the dean, um, I felt like our students lived in their power for that 2.5 hours. Like they recognize the strength of their collective voice. And you're right, if we were doing this on campus, the likelihood that as many, as diverse as folks from the campus would have shown up, I highly doubt that. But in this virtual space, our students, I think, really showed us a lesson of the power of them getting organized. But more importantly, like you said, Nestor, really kind of living in acknowledging some of their hurt and really asking the institution to step up. So it's it's a powerful space, and I'd love to hear from folks how exactly they would like to see us continue this. We've pledged to do this through the summer while we are absolutely going to be in a virtual space. But once we return to campus, I would really be intrigued and interested to hear how folks want to ensure that there is opportunity to have these types of discussions. So I think we've got some hands up, Ness. Do you want to go to?
Yeah, trying to get to Cassandra right now. Give me 1 second. Cassandra, you should be able to unmute your microphone now. Hello? There you go.
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Um, I think it's interesting that you're saying that, thinking about what's going on and the conversations that we're having as an institution, and what we need to do better for our students. But I know for a fact that we have tried to have programming that would be extremely beneficial to our students in this moment as they are taking to the streets. We have tried to have Know Your Rights um, panels and discussions, and that was shut down. That was directly shut down by our department um, with a little kind of pressure. So if we're trying to help our students, and we know that they're taking to the streets because of what we've said, what students said last week, how can we do that if we're being told that certain types of programming that help students who are activists, help students who are interested in these types of movements, and help students to understand their rights and to keep their own well-being during these processes are shut down by the two of you. You both are men of color, and specifically you, Dean Pryor, being a man. What does that say about OSC? What does that say about the school? And what does that say about what our actual focus is and our intentions are? If we're trying to help our students, we have to recognize that, yes, not everyone has the same policy, not everyone is going to do the same, be involved in the same processes and the same acts. Taking to the streets,
Mm-hmm.
they should know their rights and how to protect themselves. Just walking down the streets and get or stopped in stop and frisk or whatever case may be, they should know their rights. I'm trying to find out from you, a person who shut this down, and we tried to deliver this past Black History Month, what you have to say about that now. Because to me right now, that's very contradictory statements. So if you could shed some light onto what kind of programming we should have that's eyes, or what you would have done differently. Thank you.
Sure. And I'll respond to that directly. Thank you for your question, Cassandra, and thank you for your leadership in that space and in others. And I'll speak directly to that program. Um, My question was not about, and anyone that was in that conversation, can attest to this, about the merit of the program, the importance of the program, or the program topic or agenda. My question was the organization of it. My question was the ways in which we engage our students in important conversation. So, yes, I did say that we could not run that program. In the 5 years that I've been at Gutman, we've run other programs discussing the impact of students being stopped and frisked. As a black man growing up in the Bronx, I've been stopped and frisked. You know what I mean? And it's a conversation, a topic that I think we absolutely need to discuss. That said, the discussion does need to be organized in a way that we provide that critical information to our students in a manner in which empowers them in an organized manner, in a way that programming as a platform actually meets the expectations and needs of our students. You know what I mean? So, again, it's absolutely important conversation. But when we have those conversations, they do need to be organized and be created and structured in a way that empowers our students. And we can continue the dialogue about that, but my recollection of that was my objection had nothing to do with the basis or the topic of said conversation, but more so the organization of that program.
That's interesting. I find that slightly confusing, and you and I can talk about that perhaps at some
Sure.
point. When I know that United Men of Color had the conversation, and it was organized, and the students found it impactful. So I'm just kind of curious as to what you mean by that, so we can totally have that conversation if you're open to it, Dean Pryor. I'm just for
Absolutely.
clarity. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. So, Nestor, are there any other people with hands raised? You're muted if you're trying to talk.
Yeah, sorry, I actually was trying to talk, and at the moment there are no other hands raised. Um, and as we are coming up at 3:45, um, we typically start to wind down, and there is some information I do need to share with the community about some upcoming events and stuff. We have one more
Okay, yeah, we can
question.
keep going. We do have
Um,
another hand up in the
yep.
space, so I want to
Let me
acknowledge that.
see, Julia. I just unmuted your microphone. You're able to ask your question. I know Julia's been having some trouble connecting. I've been watching that happen. So I don't know if you can you hear me, Julia? We certainly okay. She may be having mic problems. So Julia, you can go ahead and write your question or your comment into the chat thread, and I'll read it to everyone. And also, if you're paying attention to the chat thread, I believe our colleague from the Office of Accessibility, Sylvester, has shared a YouTube video for folks to go ahead and take a look at. I'll be clicking on that shortly. I'm going to transition very quickly before we put a pin in it, just while we have this captive audience. Our colleagues, and I think, while you, Sylvester, as a segue, our colleagues in the Office of Accessibility Services have created a number of events. So the CUNY Council for Students with Disabilities, which exists at the central office level, and just this past year, the Student Government Association chartered the CCSD at Gutman Club, so that students have an opportunity to come together in partnership around programming and addressing issues and concerns for that community. they've asked me to share some of their programming. So, for example, the bingo night, um, which is June 23rd. So that's in 13 days, so a little over 2 weeks. They'll be hosting the bingo night, um, and I'm sure that this information is going to be mailed out to students, emailed out, and certainly hosted on our Gutman webpage. The meditation with Chona Navarro, which is in 5 days. You can see that information there. That looks like it's a Zoom meeting, and so you're going to have to pay attention to the password, otherwise you're not going to be able to get into that space. Um, and then there's another movie night tomorrow. Um, and they're going to keep the habit of not telling you what the name of the movie is. You're going to have to show up and see it. This is another Zoom event that they have there for you. Um, While we're talking about events, I just want to segue into the last Great Grizzly House Party, which is going to be happening this Friday, June 12th, 8 to 10 p.m. All access party, which means the DJ is going to be playing all the music from all the genres, but not all at the same time because that would not sound good. But certainly we've been having a really great mixed crowd of students, incoming students from our new class, and administrators and faculty in that space sharing over music. So that's been pretty cool. But the most exciting thing that I'm going to share today is the save the date for the Salute to Graduates. This is live on our webpage. We're asking people to make sure that they bookmark Thursday, June 18, 2020 at 10 a.m. to participate in our unveiling of the Salute to Graduate experience. Right now, on our Gutman webpage, you can go and sign the guest book, which will allow you to leave a message for a particular graduate or to any one of a number of graduates or to the entire graduating class. You're also going to be able to link to the different social media channels that we've started to use. So Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're pushing out the message. Gutman is one of the schools that comes at the very end of the graduation or commencement cycle. But we're very happy that at least 270 students this year will be graduating from Gutman. And that's an awesome number, something to celebrate. And I'm sure a lot of students are looking for the end of the year. So that's the news in a nutshell. The last thing, our colleague Lewis wanted me to make sure that I shared with you that you please follow the CUNY Coalition for Students with Disabilities on the Instagram page, CCSDA Gutman, and also their email is ccsd@gutman@gmail.com. So we want to make sure that you pay attention to them. Um,
Yeah, and Nesta, while you're still reading that, it looks like Julia had problems with a microphone, but she was able to enter her question into the chat, and it's directly for you.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so Lewis, I'll get to you in 1 second. It's a valid question. I think what the conversation uh, last week did for a number of folks is it caused them to pause and take a really hard look at things that they were doing in their life or not doing. And so for me, it's an opportunity where some of my colleagues, some of my friends, some of the people who are on my circle of people that I talk to took a moment to check me and say, what are you doing or not doing? And in some cases, specifically, what have you not been doing with regard to supporting students and interrogating anti-Black or racist behaviors? And like a lot of other people, but I can't speak to their experiences, I had to take a look and say, you know what, there's some things there that I need to really interrogate, change, get some more education and learning, and start to put into practice what those things are. So for me, it's been a disruptive journey. but one that is necessary, one that I'm not going to shy away from. I have to, fully face that there are places where I was part of the problem, and that's uncomfortable. And I think that's a question um, that I'm going to be struggling with for some time. But my hope is to continue to gain the knowledge, uh, look at the resources that are out there, start to really listen, because it's not my place to stand at the forefront of this, but really to listen and just find where I can do the work of helping to move the needle forward, while embracing the things inside me that have to change. So I know that this challenge came to me, like I said, from peers, colleagues. It also came to me from students. My student government association and other students affiliated with that also reached out to me and said, "Where were you?" Um, and so now I'm working to fix those things with them, and then by extension, hopefully the community at large. So Julia, I hope that that answers your question. This is a very, very personal journey, but it's one that is going to impact my practice moving forward. And I think it's safe to say that there's a lot of folks uh, that are situated like I am. Um, White passing Latino males uh, who, within my community for a long time, we've been incredibly anti-black. That's part of our upbringing. That's part of society. It's part of things that we've allowed to become part of our DNA, and now we have to disrupt that. So um, that's where I'm at, and I'm willing to continue to have that conversation with just about any person uh, who feels comfortable having that with me. But that's the path I'm on. I'm gonna put the period there because this isn't about me. But I also want to make sure I give Lewis the space to say what he has to say. So Lewis, I'm going to unmute your mic. You should be able to speak now. Are you there?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. I want to take the time to thank you, Nestor, again for sharing those events that the CCSD at Government Club is doing. I just wanted to make sure you have the event as well for tomorrow that we're doing with the Office of Accessibility. You have that event as well, right? Because I wanted to, I'm bringing it up because I wanted to give a big shout out to Sylvester Allen and Marcus Griffin from our Office of Accessibility, because we're going to be doing an event tomorrow on WebEx, which is the Students with Disabilities Facing Adversity and Systemic Racial Justice. And right on the flyer, it just says that the forum will provide a safe place for students with disabilities and their allies to decompress and have a rich dialogue about systemic racist injustice in America. So I wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of the event, because I think that's going to be an incredible event that's going to be happening tomorrow, and another great opportunity for students to whether students have a disability or not, they can still join on WebEx to that event. I think it'll be an incredible event, and I'm really proud of our I'm really proud to be a part of the Office of Accessibility team, and we're really working all together as a team, because it takes a village to make sure that all students are represented with and without disabilities at government. So thank you again for sharing those events. And again, the CCSD at Government Club is just here. We have an advisor, Marianne Sarkanoski, as well, who's been working with me as well. But I just wanted to say that we're also doing these events. We have bingo night, we have movie night, and the meditation event. But the whole idea is also to keep students engaged, and also, give them time to move away from all the negativity, and do something positive, to interact with each other, and have a good time also, to relieve the stress. So again, I thank you so much for sharing those events. And that event tomorrow at 2 p.m. on WebEx is going to be incredible. And I invite all students to join. I don't know if you still have the flyer. I hope you do. I did send it out to all the students already. I'm hoping you all checking your emails. I sent out a lot of emails today to all the students, not just students that are with disabilities. Everyone got the emails for the students. So that was pretty much it. But thank you again. I commend you all for doing these State of the Grizzly events, because it's a great opportunity to reflect and to discuss these issues that are happening.
Yeah, thank you, Louis. And one of the messages that kind of snuck in there is we also have to check our emails. So even if we're getting ready to graduate or commence next week, please continue to check your emails as messages are coming from the campus on a number of different topics that we want to make sure that students stay abreast of. We also have Professor Batiste. You should be able to unmute your microphone now, Professor Batiste, if you're still there.
Can you hear me?
We absolutely can.
Loud and clear.
My mic sounds nice. Check one, check two. So Nestor, I like what you said in terms of it not being about you, but in many ways it is about you and every faculty member and every administration member here. And if you are microcosmic, what I would say, definitely you're doing the work, but continue to do the work, because remember that in your space as a man of power, when we talk about something like anti-blackness, like even within Latinidad, you know, you open up yourself, make sure that you open up. What I would say is make sure you open up yourself to have those honest conversations with students. A lot of us come from spaces where Shakespeare said many truth is spoken in jest. So what kind of jokes have some of us made about people of other races, and even within race, like interracial jokes, right? Like people's hair texture and skin color and these types of things. So what I find is that at Gutman, we are fertile ground and we have space to help a lot of our students change the narrative, and also to give them the language to shift the narrative. If we can ask what we're doing as faculty, I'm not here to really speak about myself, but this is something that's very, very, very much at the forefront of what I do and what I'm about. So, for example, for Camp 1, I'm teaching Drowned by Juno Diaz. And by the second page, which is page 6 of the book, the older brother, Rafa, makes comments about the younger brother in front of his friends. This is in Santo Domingo. Senor Haitian, did mommy find you on the border? Is she sorry for you because of your hair and your skin color? Look at your hair. So these are conversations that when students come into my classrooms, we are going to have. And you're going to write about those things too. And so what happens is that students then start self-checking, right? It's one of the things that I say in any one of my classes, but let's say my comp 1 or my comp 2, first or second day, I'll say, I know you love your grandmother, but your grandmother is probably a racist, right? And it shocks people because people don't want to talk about their abuela or the people that we love because we hold them in some sacred spaces. But realize that a lot of the people that we love are toxic, and we only love them because our sort of obligation. If they were not family members, we would not love them in the same ways, right? And so students are like, oh, like, Batiste, you really said that? Like, how disrespectful, right? But realize that when it comes to the poison, we have to be disrespectful. And then students 5 minutes later say, wow, you know what? My grandmother really is racist. So let's now have an honest conversation about that. Or my grandmother is anti-black, even though she is mulatto or Dominican or Puerto Rican, right? So because we have a population that is perhaps 80%, you guys have the numbers, but perhaps 80% black, brown, Latinx, and so forth, we want to give these students and all of them the equipment that they need so that they can have the conversations. And they need to know that they can come to us repeatedly and speak to them in a certain kind of truth that their mothers and their abuelas and abuelo and all the people that they love, and certainly media has not been speaking. We need to be that honest voice. So part of it means that we are honest with ourselves. So that man in the mirror, keep looking at him, keep having that conversation, because students, we might not think about it, but we are the coaches for their teams. Students need our direction. And if our voice is ambiguous or ambivalent, then where will they go? Right? So it is incumbent upon us to do the work. Like, we're not stupid. Some pretty smart people on this Zoom, on this Collaborate right now, right? So let's stop making the excuses and step up. And all of us have that to do. But what I'm saying is, it the steps, they're there. So it means like I know on my end, that's certainly going to be a feature, it has been and will continue to be, and even more so now, a feature of my curriculum. And not to the exclusion of people, but we need to know that this thing is real and we need to confront it. Like I said it last week, but we've been pussyfooting around a lot of these things and realize how people imitate their leaders. I mean, this country is an example of that, and any number of countries. We and you guys here are the leaders at Gutman. Students will follow you. Students will follow your leads. All right. So, what voices are we going to speak to them with that they can strengthen their own voices? All right. Um, I guess that's it for now. But let's plant these seeds, man. And I'm here. I'm up for it. I'm up for it. Like I'm tired of dancing around. I like to dance, but not around these kinds of things, right? So these are the
Right.
conversations we need to have. And like I said, we know that there are all these buzzwords, you know, anti-racism, anti-black, this, that, that. What do these things really mean? Like, these are the kinds of conversations like we can have even in the state of the Grizz, but certainly when things move or continue to move into these new normals that we're moving towards, right? We need to be able to have these conversations honestly, because then when we have these conversations and we give or we share an empowering language to students, students will know that we have their backs and their fronts and their sides, right? So that's what I have to say for today. But check yourselves, man. I mean, too many of us make light of these things. My grandmother used to say, what is joke to the butcher is death to the cow. You know what I mean? The butcher, it's a joke for him, or I guess the guy who slaughters the cow, but it's not a joke for the cow. And, I'm using an animal kind of analogy, but I think you guys get the point. All right? Like, let's not joke about some of these things. We are small space, but we are an impactful space. Just imagine if we as a small college can keep giving this language to our students. What kind of powerful people will be in the world? Like, I think a lot of us take our tenure at Gutman too lightly, and I use tenure loosely, by the way, in its all its applications. I mean, students know I'm about words, and so we take our time and our space and our responsibilities at Gutman too lightly, right? This is a small space, an impactful space. If we say that, or if it's been bandied about that we're the #1 community college in the country, let's really make that so, not just in word, but in action. I'm done for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Batiste. I mean, I think your words resonate loudly and deeply for me personally, especially the part about coaching our students, and I use the word empowering, but I think coaching is more important because it's more of a preparation for the world that they are really right now leading. You know what I mean? And I thank you for your leadership and for speaking up today and for always being authentic. You know what I mean? I've learned so many things from our interactions that I have today, and I hope folks were listening and were able to hear you to make some changes here because as you said, we still need to examine within ourselves. I mean, and that's something that, like you said, we use these buzzwords. What does it translate to? Knowing the definition and understanding the definition are two different things. You know what I mean? And the next phase of that is living that. You know what I mean? And being accountable for missteps and misunderstandings and then making those changes going forward. You know what I mean? So I thank you sincerely as a colleague, as a friend, and just as another man of color. I really appreciate you stepping up and stepping in and continuing to call in people to this conversation and coaching our students. Amazing. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So,
We have a student. We have a student.
okay.
Just before
Yep.
you can go first, and then
No, I was going to say that the students are asking for some responses from more faculty members and other administrators in the space And I think that I think it would be helpful to the audience and to us, just as part of the State of the Grizz, for folks to raise their hands so we can unmute their microphone so they can speak and so that folks can hear them. But more importantly, that we can have a dialogue instead of, a one-sided, you know, statement in the chat. I think that's what folks are looking for. I think hope for it to happen a little bit more organically. But we're here now. We're just asking people to step into the conversation, and give some commentary. So I'll let you continue, but I just wanted to make that statement. That's what students are looking for, and I'm asking now in support of that for folks to step into the actual conversation.
Okay, so Angelique, you're up next, and then you're going to be followed by Jerain, and then Professor Ungama. So, Angelique, go ahead and unmute your microphone.
Hi everybody, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right, awesome. So hi everybody. I just wanted to comment. I think it's important to just mention that the conversation shouldn't just be happening in a reading and writing class, in a critical issues class, in a class that's just specifically meant for analyzing, historical events and things like that. It should be happening in quantitative reasoning. It should be happening in business classes. It should be happening all around. And I think that's just something that I want to kind of emphasize because professors do have the freedom to create their curriculum. They do have the freedom of kind of choosing how they want to share information. And I think that we should be doing that in all our classes, whether it's reading, writing, math, just to continue this conversation and to kind of not have that gap of it just being taken place in one specific class, and then as soon as you go to a math class, oh, that's it, conversation is over. You know what I mean? So I think it's important that we continue that conversation and we emphasize that it should be happening through all majors: business, human services, liberal arts and sciences. And that's kind of just something that I wanted to take note of, because see, there's professors here that I've had for critical issues, quantitative reasoning, and is throughout. It doesn't just happen in one class and stops in another. But thank you for letting me share, and good to be here. Good to see everybody.
So, I'm going to keep Angelique on the speaker queue just in case she has a follow-up thought. But Jerain, who is your 2020-2021 incoming SGA president, now has the floor. So, Jerain, you can go ahead and unmute your mic.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh my gosh, that's great. So I honestly agree with a lot of the commentary that was said today. I think it was very powerful and very honest. Part of being at Gutman is, I've said this 1,000 times, sense of community. And when students speak about their frustrations, they're not just looking for like more verbal responses back. They're looking for legitimate actions. So like professors will send an email and it is appreciated, but it's sort of like, what is this email really doing? Saying, hey, we're with you, we understand what's going on. But at the end of the day, if the majority of protesters are young people, are us college students, us high school students, us, why have a paper? For example, I am personally a workaholic. I really enjoy working. I enjoy doing a lot of assignments only because it takes my mind off of everything. But right now, I'm in a state where I don't want to mind off of everything, because what's going on around me is very important. So instead of having, for example, a 10-page paper, cut it down to 5. If you're really understanding what's going on and you know that the students are stressed, there could be students that could be held custody right now and can't turn in that 10-page paper and can't tell anybody because, what the police are doing very sneaky things. And I think it's more so being very cautious of how we do things, because I understand, that there are certain things that the administration doesn't really want us to do right now. But I think, in my opinion, it doesn't matter, because we have to push safety, we have to push cautiousness, we have to make people aware of the hard truths in life. And you know, it's kind of showing the administration like, look, we appreciate the concerns, but at the end of the day, this is what's going on outside, and we have to be aware and conscious about what's really going on. We can't just like, I appreciate these meetings, but having a bunch of these meetings and having very little action followed behind it when it comes to the administration and everything, it's kind of like, well, what can we do more to help, and what can we do more to kind of let the administration know and let faculty and everyone know that, like, hey, we students are tired, we are stressed, we are very, very overwhelmed, we're mentally drained right now. And I get this constantly from so many students, and they come up to me and they tell me how exhausted they are, and for good reason. Like, the whole world is falling apart around them, you know. People they love are the people they love are being, like, you know, either taken away, you know. Even coronavirus is still very active too, so you know, it's also practicing proper safety. um, so it's a lot goes into it, and I feel like there's a lot more action to be taken, you know. We're entering a new semester, not spring two, more so fall, and I think that's important to start off on the right foot. That's really all I have to say.
Thank you for that, Jeraine. Some really important points there. It is a lot, and there really is a mountain of stuff on your shoulders, and we need to pay attention to that and minimize that load. It's already a heavy load, so I hear you. One of the things I'm going to ask, this is just housekeeping, is that if we're going to give you the mic, as much as possible to minimize background noise, whether that's TVs, radios, um, or wind gusts, as much as we can control wind gusts, just so that we can make sure that we hear you clearly in the thread. Professor Ungama, your mic is now going to be unmuted, so you have the floor.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone, and hi, students especially. I'm trying to respond to Angelique's ask about what faculty are doing, and I can speak a little bit to that individually and as a faculty member, that as a wider group of people here. I can say individually that last week I really just tried to listen to all of you a lot. Through a lot of conversation, and you really lit a fire under the college, and I want to thank you for that. It was long overdue. It needed to happen, and the spark that you ignited kind of carried across the whole week in a lot of different ways. It carried across many other meetings I was in college council, carried across an additional faculty meeting that we summoned on Friday, so we as a faculty could sit and address all of the things that you brought up. It carried over into Saturday's conversation facilitated by UMOC and Marcus, and it was a lot of listening and just trying to sit and be present and take notes, and then give myself some time to pause and then like read over the notes again and see where I fit into all of this stuff, and then what I could do to respond to it as, your faculty. I don't take being a faculty member lightly. I have to say I take it very seriously. Teaching is what I love more than almost anything in the whole world. And so I thank you for calling us on a lot of ish that was going on. So since you wanted some actionable things, I can tell you some of the things that I've been thinking about and talking about with my colleagues. So on Tuesday morning, I had my follow-up meeting with Dr. Yolanda Seeley Ruiz. She is a consultant that the college brought in to work with faculty on racial literacy, and we've been working with her the past 2 years. She was also my my dissertation advisor at the Teachers College, so her and I have about a 10-year relationship, more than that at this point. And I was talking to her because we were supposed to develop as faculty kind of already working on actionable plans and how we were going to take this racial literacy work that we were doing she's really big on like the excavation of self and figuring out, like Tal was saying, the racism that is embodied in us as individuals and in our family lineage, and how we were raised, how we were taught. And one of the things I talked with her about was creating something similar to what she created up at Teachers College, which is called a racial literacy roundtable series. Now, she had really interesting ideas, and one of the things that I heard someone say on Saturday's meeting, one of the students say, is why weren't we brought into these kind of professional development or training sessions on anti-bias and on culturally relevant teaching? Like, why weren't the students at the table? And when I was looking at Yolanda's racial literacy roundtable information, I noticed that, you know, when she had these roundtables, everyone was invited. Like, students were invited, staff was invited, students' parents could come, teachers came, students came. And so we talked about like how we could do something together as a whole college, maybe a common read together. She suggested, I'm holding it up, I don't know if you can see me, this stamped Racism, Anti-Racism, and You. It's a book that just came out. It's a remix of the Ibram X. Kendi book, kind of a blend of his How to Be an Anti-Racist plus his larger work of the history of anti-Blackness in the United States. But it's remixed by Jason Reynolds, who is a YA author. So it could be like a read that we could all do on top of our typical reading, like, because I know you guys are reading for class and your faculty are always reading, prepping for class too. So we talked about how maybe that might be a good whole college text that the entire college could adopt and study for a year and do different groups of work off of. We also talked about the faculty, your faculty have been talking about affinity groups, and I know that Bindi brought this up at College Council as well, that, you know, I have said that I'd be happy to work with white faculty to kind of like push ourselves to think differently. And, you know, everybody, as Marcia said, is at kind of a different point in this journey of dealing with their own racism. A lot of Asian faculty have said that they would like to join an affinity group. And I think that this is something that we can start to push ourselves in clusters, but then also together to kind of, to then be able to provide you with different programming to include you in some of these things. Another thing I wanted to bring up is curriculum. My PhD is in curriculum, and I am all about looking at Gutman's curriculum. And Angie, you're totally right, and you're going to be a great teacher one day when you say that, like, we can't just relegate talking about these issues into critical issue or reading and writing, but this has to be like a college-wide, like, kind of look at things. So I'm happy to continue to work on that. I know that we've talked a lot about this as faculty in the past, but it's not transparent to you guys, and that's like another thing I would like to, maybe we need to bring students more into these curriculum decisions, and even if you are alumni and you are no longer at Gutman, but you are, especially if you're interested in studying education and you're interested in these things, I would love to have you come back and work with us, because I think that it's, you know, the more voices we have at the table, the better. Another thing we brought up yesterday at the College Personnel Committee, the CPC, is how we evaluate faculty, faculty performance. We brought up like how we can, the concerns that a lot of you raised, how we can address them in faculty evaluation through formal and informal means, so that this becomes something that faculty know. This kind of like idea of being more inclusionary, more explicitly including all groups of students, more explicitly shutting down anything racist in the classroom, like really making sure that your classroom spaces are very safe for learning, and also that push everybody. We talked how we can maybe fold this into faculty evaluation as well. And last, and then I'm done. I tried to write down points so I could give you clear answers, because those of you who've had me in class, you know I ramble. Last is the faculty are trying to set up our own Instagram account so that you can know what we're thinking and saying and standing for, and have another mode to communicate with us through, because there are a lot of us and there are a lot of you, and I know that we might communicate individually, but that doesn't give all students the sense of having access to us. So we're in the process of trying to figure out how to do this with the communications office and things like that. So I just want you to know that we are really listening to you, and if you have any kind of direct asks that you want of us or direct things that like you want to see, please demand. We're really here for you, and I hope that answered a few of your questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Ungama. I want to pick up one of the threads that you said about students showing up in spaces. We have opportunities that are available to students to touch some of these planning spaces, and I'm going to put a link in the chat right now. It's to the governance webpage of the college. Specifically, this is the one that links to the various committees. The Academic Technology Committee, Student Services Committee, the Strategic Planning and Budget Committee, the Curriculum Committee. They have designated student spots. Now, in our last election cycle, we did not get a huge turnout in terms of students running for these positions. They are still open. We also have a couple of seats available on the Student Government Association. Specifically, we're looking to fill 5 senator seats. So there's opportunities for students to start to populate the leadership and to align themselves with the governance spaces and serve up the student voice in those committees to help continue to raise awareness and push these issues forward. So thank you for raising that up and reminding me to put that little piece of information out there. Our next speaker is going to be Angel Grandizio. So Angel, you can unmute your mic now and speak.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Well, my question is kind of off topic of the Black Lives Matter topic we were talking about. Curious about, like, since we're in the phase 2 area, I want to know, like, if like we could, like, at least some students can go back to the school and see other people and other friends. Can like that be a like possibility or something like that?
Yeah, so that's almost applying the brakes to one line of conversation. And unless I'm speaking out of turn here, I know that the chancellor just put out a message to CUNY-wide with regard to what being back on campus is going to be like and the order of priority for who gets to show up back on campus and when. Because Gutman is a single facility building for all intents and purposes, we have some special considerations due to limited space. So the opportunity for us to go back and populate the building as we are used to doing it is probably not on the table at the moment. And at least with the updates that I've seen, there is a plan for some staff to be back in the space. And those staff are mostly going to be working with students on point of contact kind of stuff where business has to be transacted, as opposed to the building being a social space that people can be occupied. That's the best that I can say.
Yeah, as Nestor said, it's going to be a phase back in process. Our Director of Public Safety and our Administration and Finance VP, Ms. Mary Coleman, are on point for those things and are working with facilities and with the university, because we are part of a university system, to roll out a return to campus plan. As Nestor said, because of the location and nature of our entrance and our elevators and stairwells, our phasing and reopening of campus is going to particular to Gutman. But because, again, we're part of a university system, we have to be in line with the university, and we're working towards those things. With all of those considerations that Angel asked and Nestor responded to are absolutely on the table and part of the discussion and subsequent plan.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Dean, we are at the 4:30 almost mark
Yeah.
of this conversation. I know that while we've certainly given people space, it looks like we hit the end of folks wanting to actively speak. We've certainly had some folks typing into the thread. But we may be at the end of this particular discussion, so I want to give you back the space to end the conversation. I'm going to put up some more posters for people to look at before I stop recording and end the broadcast. So,
you know, Ness, I'm going to edit one of those words and say I'm going to put a pin and pause the conversation today. This is an ongoing conversation, ongoing dialogue and discussion that needs to happen. And I forget which student said it, in this space and in other spaces. Whether it's Instagram, whether it's Facebook, whether it's in classrooms, through programs, through some of the processing spaces that we have provided for our students, the conversation must continue and must go on. This is going to be a part of next week's State of the Grizz. You know what I mean? We're going to continue to have this conversation, and we're going to solicit some additional input from our students about what they want next week's session to look like. If there are people or person in particular that they want to hear from, and we're going to continue this dialogue. You know, students, I'll continue to say we have your back, and sometimes having your back looks like us having to make adjustments within our support for you and our support from one another as colleagues, as Black, Indigenous people of color, as, Latino men, as Black faculty, white faculty, as colleagues. We need to be comfortable calling each other in, holding each other accountable, and looking for opportunities to expand our own knowledge. That's hard work. These exercises are asking people in many ways to change how they think and about how they feel about certain things. It can't happen today. It starts and continues today, and we build on it. And hopefully, we'll be further along when we have this conversation next week. The institution, from administrative side, the faculty side, the staff side, should be able to give more examples of activities, programs, and events that we are doing in support of students and to create spaces to have discussion, but also to help folks figure out action steps. That's what this space is about support and again, turning that to action. So Grizzlies, I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for your engagement. I want to thank the faculty, the staff, and the administrators that joined in today. We started this 14 weeks ago for a half an hour, I think the first one was, and then we went to 45 minutes. Last week we went for 2.5 hours. This week we're an hour and a half. Once we start at 3 o'clock, we're going to continue the conversation until the conversation needs to be paused until the next installment. So again, thank you. Again, we're here, we got your back, and we are going to continue to improve and listen to what it is that students are telling us they need and that they want. And we're also going to continue to support our colleagues and do the reflective work that needs to happen in order to change the agenda and move things forward. I want to thank one of our students, Deborah Williams, for reminding us. We talked about elections and registering and census. The New York primary is June 23rd. So I hope everyone is registered so that you can get your voice heard in that space on the 23rd of June and be actively engaged in your communities and in the national election and in regional and statewide elections, because those policymakers represent you. They're not in charge, you're in charge. You and your voice, the more active you and your community are, the more apt they are to listen and to represent your opinion, your voices. So the way we do that is we mobilize and we get out and vote. For anyone that's going out and protesting, I ask that you are safe, you wear your mask. I know it's warm. I know it's uncomfortable when you're out there, and I know it's tough to breathe. I myself am out there breathing and sweating. But you know what? Be safe, wear your mask, try to practice social distancing when you're out there. And you know, we support you and we got your back. And like I said, we'll be out there at that protest or at others as we continue to light up the darkness. So thank you, Grizzlies. I appreciate you. And Nestor, thanks again, man. It's always good to be in the space and to create this as an opportunity for our students and our community to come out and to learn and support one another.
Yeah, Dean, thank you for that shout out. Very quickly, I want to just give folks an opportunity to see the event that Lewis was talking about for tomorrow for facing adversity and systemic racial injustice. It's a online, but if you don't have a computer, you have a mobile phone or a tablet, you can access it. And so it's a lot of text. But Lewis assures me that it was emailed out to the community. So please check your emails. Certainly check the Gutman webpage, and that information will be up there. We'll bang the drum on getting yourself registered to vote. You could do that through your CUNY First account. It's a link on the upper left-hand side of the menu bar that says CUNY Votes, and you can register that way. Download the form, fill it out, send it out. There's a lot of organizations that are doing outreach right now to the community, especially the Black and Brown communities, to ensure that folks have an opportunity to vote. We're going to hear from one more student. I hate to do this to everybody, but Naomi, who is your incoming secretary for the 2020-2021 SGA. Naomi, you can unmute your mic. Or not. Okay, her thing just went red on me. So we'll hopefully she'll come back in, and we're losing everybody now as folks are leaving. Okay, so make sure that you get out the vote. Make sure that you please stay safe if you're out there. Social distancing, wear your mask. These are things that have been said. Understand that we can't wait to be back in the space with each other, and we want to do that safely with you all. And so please keep looking at your emails for updates. Keep visiting the Gutman webpage. Keep reaching out and having conversations with us. But we will definitely be here next week, Wednesday, just before the Salute to Graduates. Naomi, if you're able to unmute yourself, you can say one last thing.
Hey,
There you go.
just wanted to say it out loud, and I've said it for any meeting that I've kind of been a part of. I am a new member of the incoming SGA, and it is really important. Like, you have to remember, like, our entire SGA right now is currently, like, Hispanic. I would really, really love if we could have some more Black voices on it. I remember hearing from Monica say how she was the only member in the current SGA who was Black, and I felt that that's an issue, and we should have our Black students come up here and represent the school as well, since we are, like, 80%. Like Mr. Batista says, we are 80% of the school population. You guys should have a voice as well. And your vote also matters more than ever this year. Please make sure that you, even if you're scared of the virus, there's an absentee ballot that you can get. AOC has a great thing that she's talking about on her Instagram page. So please don't be scared. Like, you guys might be scared of this pandemic, but imagine being Black and going outside after this pandemic and still being scared for your life because you're afraid that police might, like, target you and come after you. Like, you really have to consider who you want to have in office, not just in school, but also outside in the government. So please make sure you make your vote, and don't be scared to join the SGA. There's no I in team, and we are here to support you as well. So that's all I wanted to say. I hope you guys are all safe.
Thank you for that announcement, Naomi. And if anyone listening is interested in joining the SGA, or as a member of the government community, you have a student who is interested in doing leadership at that level, please direct them to me or to a member of the SGA, and we'll get them signed up and get them the application so that they could join. My hope is that we get more people applying than we have space for, so that we can then fill some of the other open positions in the governance structure of the campus. So there's leadership opportunities there for the students. Please do not hesitate to reach out. We certainly will do more outreach to get that in front of students.
And one more thing. Also, if you want to join the SGA and you're interested in joining it, just remember that you have to have a 2.7 GPA in order to be a senator. So just keep that in mind. All right?
All right. Thank you, Naomi. Okay, Gutman, thank you so much for taking time to be with us for this past hour and a half. We enjoy this. We're hoping to bring this to you on continuing weeks. I don't think we're going to take a break. So this is going straight through the summer and into the start of fall one for as long as we need to be remote, and maybe even when we're back on campus. But that's a different conversation. Please be safe and do good things in the world. Thank you. Peace.